our executive lead member, is not available today to chair the meeting, so I'm standing in for him. He apologises he can't be here. I'll just run through some basic rules of the meeting, just to welcome you all and to set the guidelines for how we're running the meeting. So a few technicalities. The board meeting is not subject to the 1972 Local Government Act and therefore can continue to take place virtually. It's only the board members that are taking decisions at the meeting. Others in attendance are there to provide advice to the board. The agendas and papers have been published on the council's website in advance of the meeting. The council will be making a recording of the meeting, and this will be published on the council's YouTube channel and website in due course. So do behave. We don't want to be in the Daily Mail for having a raucous meeting or anything like that. So to highlight the following, we will run the meeting via Microsoft Teams. Members and officers may remotely join the meeting to speak on specific agenda items or to observe. Other members of the public and partners can observe the meeting remotely via Teams. There's also some provision for any members of the public to speak at the meeting via public questions or statements that they've submitted in advance. So in terms of the use of Teams and how we're going to run the meeting, can you use the meeting chat function only for the purposes of the meeting, primarily to indicate to the chair that you wish to speak? So if we can minimize chat in the chat function, that would be great. Please only speak at the chair's invitation after raising your hand virtually. Say your name before speaking, that would be really helpful so that people know who you are. And please also note the importance of turning off microphones and cameras when not speaking, so it just keeps things a bit less cluttered for people. But I will keep my camera on as the chair of the meeting. So Claire, are there any apologies for absence you want to run through?
Thank you. Yes, we have apologies from the chairman. Thank you. And we also have apologies from Natasha Bates, who's one of your advising officers, and I'm standing in for your permanent clerk. My name is Claire Dickin, so I'm here working for Democratic Services.
Thank you, Claire. Okay, so I mean, before we get into the nuts and bolts of the meeting, I just wanted to apologise for last week for when we had to adjourn the meeting straight away. Having done a bit of work with Democratic Services, we concluded that was really the only way to enable us to have business fully discussed. So I think last meetings was a quick adjournment, and this is essentially a continuation of that meeting. I think if we hadn't done that, we would have had to have sort of re-advertised and taken more time to be able to get the meeting going again. I mean, the reason for doing that will become apparent as we go through the agenda. We weren't able to have a full and frank discussion about the agenda item on the bus services update from the operators, just because of the current state of play with their services and proposals. So we're in a position where we can discuss that fully now. So we felt it was better to have that discussion rather than essentially have a meeting last week where we couldn't discuss it fully and frankly with you. So hopefully you will all agree that was the right thing to do, and thank you for being understanding last week. I really appreciated the vote to adjourn the meeting without too much information upon which to make that decision. So thank you for going with that. So the minutes of the last meeting is the next agenda item. Does anybody have any concerns with the minutes? Anything that they think isn't accurate? Okay, not seeing any hands up. That's good. So we will take that as an accurate meeting minute. So next we have public question time. And public questions or statements should be submitted in writing no later than 3 clear working days before the meeting. We've had a written statement and question submitted by Andy Strong. So Andy isn't on the call, I don't think, so I will read this out for you. The recent extension of government funding for buses and the fare cap is welcome news, but Somerset Council and bus operators need to make full use of this breathing space to address some basic issues that are significant barriers to attracting non-bus users. Bus Back Better, published more than 2 years ago now, directed that a strong network identity or brand should be adopted to present all local bus services as part of a coherent and integrated network. Thinking of Transport for London's roundel or the National Rail symbol as examples. We need to create a distinct network identity, embracing all bus operator services in Somerset, and that doesn't mean painting all the buses in the same livery. Bus Back Better also directed that all areas should have a range of multi-operator tickets so that passengers don't have to buy new tickets every time they change from one operator's service to another's. Contrary to the impression given by some of the industry, it doesn't need major investment in new ticket machines or funding from the council to achieve this. With plenty of examples in neighbouring areas, and some of the bus operators in Somerset participate in them. Comprehensive information, such as timetables and maps, is essential. Some operators produce excellent printed material and maintain good quality roadside information, but only for their own services. One consequence of this is evident at places like Frome Marketplace, where the large display cases in the bus shelters contain a random assortment of timetables of different shapes, sizes and colours for some but not all local bus services. Worse still, there are timetables stuck to the shelter glass. This presents an extremely poor image of the bus network. The solution is for Somerset Council to work with bus operators and passenger groups to develop a bus information strategy as a matter of urgency and to assume responsibility for providing comprehensive information, recharging operators for costs associated with their commercial services. Again, there are examples in neighbouring areas to build on. The Enhanced Partnership Scheme provides an excellent framework within which the council and bus operators can work collaboratively without fear of breaching competition law. Its purpose is not only to cover the BSIP funded programme, but also to assist all parties to tackle the basic issues, such as the one I have outlined. I urge all members of the Bus Advisory Board to press for speedy action in these areas. Andy Strong, resident and bus user. John Perrott, have you got anything to say in response to that at the moment? Obviously, there's some issues for us to consider, but it'd be useful to get an initial response to the point.
Yeah, hi Mike. Yeah, I mean, they're very good points that Andy is making, and there are things there that we're already starting to work on to coordinate timetables. There is a lot of work to do, and we really, we need the time, obviously, to focus on this and to look at how we can bring these things forward. We have a system at the moment which very much is around what Andy is suggesting, that operators post their own timetables. We need to look at our resources internally to be able to make sure that we could provide that support and to do that across the county. At the moment, we only have limited staffing for that, but it's certainly something that we're looking at, and we know that particularly members of the bus partnership want a better coordinated service for information at bus stops, and it's something we are looking at.
Okay, thank you, John. And then the next question is, please confirm that if the board accepts recommendations in item 4 on coordination of bus timetable changes, that those provisions will be added to the Enhanced Partnership Scheme by means of the bespoke variation mechanism to ensure that all parties abide by them. John, have you got a response to that point?
Again, we can certainly look at that, and yeah, we'll look at the EP in relation to that, and then come back to this board in the future. Yeah, next meeting.
Yeah, thanks, John. I think it's a technicality, isn't it, of how essentially whether it's already covered in the enhanced partnership scheme in the way it's worded, or whether we need to amend it, and if we do need to amend it, when the best time to do that is. I think so. We will look at those points, just get some advice for people and make sure we're doing it in the right way. But the point is well made. Okay, thank you. So I don't think there are any more public questions that have been submitted. Is that correct, Claire? There's nothing I've missed from your perspective before we move on?
So, thank you, Chair. Nothing else in that item.
Okay, thank you very much. So moving on then. So this is item 4, the enhanced partnership EP scheme, setting fixed dates for timetable changes, and there was a paper attached to the agenda for this item. Natasha was due to present this item for you, but as she's now on leave, unfortunately, I think I'm going to ask John to step in again and just introduce this item, if that's okay, John. Sorry, it's going to be a bit of the John show today, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, me again. Good morning, everybody. My name is John Perrett. I'm the Operational Service Manager for Transporting Somerset. So with regard to coordinated timetables, as Mike said, there's a paper in the board papers, but just to talk you through what Natasha would have said if she were here. As you may recall, we discussed this item at the last Bus Advisory Board meeting in April. It's fair to say that the group overall was supportive of agreeing fixed dates in the year for timetable changes, whilst maintaining a level of flexibility for certain situations. So we promised to take this away and come back to this board meeting with a proposal. Since the last meeting, we've contacted operators for their feedback, and we've had responses from operators providing the vast majority of the bus network in Somerset, and they were supportive of the proposals. We discussed this at the bus user group in June, who again was supportive of agreeing fixed dates in the year with flexibility for certain situations. Natasha also attended meetings organised by WECA to try and coordinate changes as much as possible, and has been liaising with WECA since then. The EP sets out that operators should work towards coordinated dates for timetables. We appreciate that we are beyond the original deadline for this, but this has largely been down to the level of uncertainty in the market and short-term funding. We now feel that we need to carry on and get a proposal agreed. As you will see from the report that was circulated with the agenda, there are a set of proposals that we're asking operators to agree. These proposals are that the operators subject to Somerset's EP adopt 2 key periods in the year from 2024 when timetable changes will be implemented. These are recommended as Easter, but dates will vary depending on when Easter falls each year, and the beginning of September in time for the start of the new academic year. Agree that the exact dates for the subsequent year will be decided at each autumn board meeting, with the 2024 dates being agreed at the 17th of October 2023 meeting. Agree that flexibility will be maintained for seasonal timetable changes and emergency/unforeseen circumstances. These will be by exception and not the norm, and will need to be discussed and agreed with the local transport authority's public transport team. And agree that where dates of seasonal changes are known in advance, these will, where possible, be registered at the same time as the Easter and September changes, although the implementation of the change will fall at a later date. Whilst we are maintaining flexibility for seasonal changes, we would ask operators, where possible, where changes are known in advance, that they are registered at the same time as the Easter and September changes, if agreed, even though the change may come at a later date, so passengers know what to expect. And at that point, I'll hand back to the chair for further comments.
Thank you, John. Hopefully that's clear, and we'll go some way, hopefully a long way, towards meeting the needs that we've raised earlier about the need for a bit more consistency and clarity on expectations for people, and hopefully that is something that the operators will also support. And I know Tash did talk to people, obviously, as John's explained, to come to the conclusion that was probably the best thing to do. So are there any comments or observations on those proposals from anybody? I think anybody wants to Ray, so I've got a hand up from David Ridgewell. David.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Yeah, so I just want to clarify Simon's on the call as well. Just clarify the seasonal services, because obviously we're in a tourism economy in Somerset, and we've got the Explore Explorer, we've got the 20, which is a part of the coaster network that First West of England run, and just making sure that these services that we do know about, and I know First South registered their Dorset ones regularly every year on the uplift on the Jurassic Coast. Just want to make sure that obviously as a way of making sure that the seasonal services are important to the tourism economy are taken account of in the changes. That may also include in future buses towards Cheddar and places, but I think that's an important issue just to make sure we've got clarified, and I agree they should be registered, but obviously most of them don't start until June or July in the county and come off when the school holidays finish.
Okay, thanks, David. So, John, are you able to confirm if the services that David's mentioned would come under the banner of seasonal services in how we were thinking about this?
Yes, they would, and that's part of the notes that I mentioned earlier, that we would look to operators to register at the same times as they're registering those changes for Easter and September. Even though the dates may vary, what we would like operators to do is to make those registrations in some cases early, so that actually people are aware at the same time of the changes that are upcoming.
Okay, thanks, John. Okay, just quickly to say to Stuart Moon, hi Stuart. We're operating on cameras off at the moment, if that's okay. Whilst we're having the meeting, be appreciated. So thanks, Stuart. Okay, so we tend to operate by, as under the terms of reference to this group, operating by consensus where possible about the items, rather than voting on everything. Are there any particular objections to this proposal that we
Hi Chair, it's Claire here.
Hi,
Can
Claire.
I bring to your attention, something that has been put in the chat from Ian Bell, but it is on behalf of Joss Strickland, who's unable to attend. I don't know if you want to read that through and see if that adds to the discussion.
Where are we? Apologies from Josh. Screen has having trouble with Teams. £1 fare scheme, good news. So this is just seems to be a commentary on the £1 fare scheme.
So it's about the next item, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't think that affects this this item at all.
Sorry, next item. Sorry, my fault.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Peter, you've got your hand up.
Hi, Mike.
Hi, Peter.
Just want to confirm that following Natasha's discussions with WECA, that we will be mirroring the WECA change dates, particularly at Easter time. Is that the intention?
John, do you have a comment on that?
I think, Peter, our intention is with Easter to ensure that the changes come in when schools return effectively after the Easter holiday. I'm not sure whether that aligns entirely with WECA. I think they do changes at Easter, but certainly our view was that we would want changes to happen when schools return after the Easter break, which is why obviously that date will vary each year.
Tourism every Easter.
Okay, is that helpful, Peter? I would. John is always helpful. I would just urge that we try and align ourselves with WECA because of the importance of cross-border routes in the north of Somerset. So I hope that's a carefully considered consideration at the time then when Somerset determines its Easter change dates.
Yeah. So, I mean, as the recommendation is for the board to approve the dates, at a meeting in advance of those for the following year. I think we can make sure that we have had that dialogue before we set those dates. I think that we can give you that commitment, Peter. Make sure we've considered the cross-boundary implications before we come with a recommendation on specific dates. Does that satisfy the concern?
Absolutely. Thanks, Mike.
Great. Okay, we'll make a note of that then. Thank you. Okay, so Peter, could you put your hand down and then we can just check if anybody has any objections to this. So just raise your hand if you've got any concerns now. No, not seeing any, so that looks like a consensus. Thank you. We will now move on to the next item, which is the update from operators on the Taunton £1 fare, the government £2 fare and service updates. So obviously this is what we're invite operators to kind of give any updates that they're wishing to give, and we've got in the chat the update that was referred to just now. I wonder if I should invite Simon Goff to speak first. Obviously, Simon, you've got some significant changes coming up. I know that you'll want to talk about. Probably, if we just go straight into those, I'm sure those will be things that people will be particularly interested in. So, are you happy to run through what's going on with your services at the moment?
Sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just loading up my screen. I should be sharing some slides. Hopefully, you can now see some slides.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, superb. Brilliant. Okay, thank you, Chair. So yes, I've got some updates today from Buses of Somerset, so First Bus. So just to give you a bit of context then, so these proposed changes from the 3rd of September, and again, Mike did mention the delay in the meeting from last week to this week. So last week was the deadline for registrations for the 3rd of September. So I have to admit some sort of part guilt in being involved in that move from last week to this week. So thank you all for bearing with us. I really do appreciate it. So these changes to our network from September reflect changes in travel patterns, but also are a reflection of the increase in costs that we've incurred through to obviously high levels of inflation, particularly around drivers and fuel, for example. We've seen a significant change in our cost base. With changing in travel patterns, obviously means we've got varying degrees of passenger numbers, and what I mean by that is we've got, and as I'll go through in the slides, there are routes that are performing and recovering well, sort of post-pandemic in the new world, and others perhaps less so. But fundamentally, our plans are designed to ensure a long-term, sustainable and reliable future for our network. So. Just moving on to the next slide. So I'm just going to cover off what those changes are to our network from September, give a bit of an insight into how the £1 Taunton fare is performing, as well as a £2 fare, and just generally looking at some overall performance of the Buses of Somerset network. So changes coming into effect in September. We are currently consulting with our staff. So we've taken the decision that in order to address the significant increase in costs that we've incurred, but also to ensure a long-term sustainable future for Buses of Somerset, we will be closing our Bridgewater depot. However, that is a closure of the building. That's merely it's an internal housekeeping decision more than anything. But fundamentally, the routes that are currently operated out of Bridgewater will be transferring into other depots, and my colleague Stuart will get into a bit more detail on those shortly. Most of the changes that we're proposing to make from September are alterations to existing timetables or frequency, and very much designed around improving reliability and placing resource where we believe that it is needed most. Where we are seeing some withdrawals of a few journeys, it is based purely on significantly low passenger numbers, and therefore a commercial decision has been taken there. In addition, due to the reasons I've just outlined as well, the park and ride contract will be up for tender later in the year, but we will continue to run that through till and to its conclusion. Just in terms of the £1 fare, as you can see there in Taunton, we are seeing some fairly significant growth. So if you look across the chart from left to right, you can see from December last year at its inception through to where we were last month, you can see that there are 28.9 thousand journeys being made on that fare. So we have seen a 14% passenger volume growth since the inception of the £1 trip, which is fantastic news. The biggest increases we're seeing on the 22, the 28, and the 30. The biggest volume growth, passenger volume growth, we're seeing on the 1, the 2, the 6, and the 7. And on those routes that are subject to the £1 fare in Taunton, the current passenger recovery rate is at 92% of pre-COVID levels, which is a slightly higher than the national average. So we are seeing that the £1 Taunton fare is absolutely having a positive impact, which is really good news. In comparison to the government £2 single fare cap, you'll see that the proportion of journeys being made at that. Of course, this covers the whole of Somerset. The proportion of journeys being made as a whole has grown from 30% in January, soon after the £2 fare was introduced, up to 45.5% of all journeys now being made at that £2 fare. So again, we can see that is having a really strong impact on passenger numbers, and you can see on the chart to the right there, that's the percentage share. That should say £2 trips, sorry, not £1. That's percentage share, and we can see that the majority of those £2 singles are being used on the 28, the 21, 21A, and the 22. So our sort of core network, as it were. So yes, again, some really positive news. In terms of overall Somerset passenger recovery, you can see the top part of the graph there is Taunton, routes that are running out of Taunton, Bridgewater in orange and yellow at the bottom there, but also then in green and Yeovil. So you can see in overall passenger volume terms, we are seeing an increase year on year of 16%, which is really good news. And that is 18% Taunton, Yeovil 11, and Bridgewater as because the closure deck 75. We've seen that reduce, and obviously we've taken a decision to move our routes elsewhere. Passenger volumes continue to remain at around 88% of pre-COVID levels holistically across Somerset. So I just mentioned 92%. That was for the routes that are mainly subject to the Taunton £1 fare initiative, but as a holistic view, we're looking at 88% of pre-COVID levels, which is about the national average. It's just perhaps slightly under. The 21A, 28, and the 1 and 77 are seeing the greatest volume growth, and the 21A is seeing the highest percentage increase at 165%, the 1 at 80%, and the 58A at 63%. So generally, a pretty good news story. Just with regards to performance, and I'm aware that this year has been challenging. It's been challenging particularly because of driver shortages, etc. Well, that has been the main challenge. Our lost mileage has, as you can see, it's had some spikes. Obviously, ultimately, it's really important that we have, if we're going to change behaviours as we want to do, it's important that we provide a reliable service. We incentivise people to leave the car and take the bus. Then we've got to provide reliable operations. So the changes that we are proposing for September will further help our ability to deliver that. We do have drivers loaned into Somerset from elsewhere. We have expanded our training school capacity, and we've got record numbers coming through that school. So currently, to the right of that graph, you can see that lost mileage position, whilst there has been some spikes, is currently in July coming right back down to where we would expect it to be. So that mileage is being lost is less than 1%. So that's a massive step in the right direction. And our changes, as I say, from September will further improve our ability to deliver a really reliable service at a time when fares have never been so cheap. This really is the massive opportunity for us all to ensure that we work collaboratively to promote the great bus network that we have in Somerset, and to encourage people to change their behaviours and support the network for its long-term sustainability. So those are the kind of the headlines of where we are from a performance perspective, and also where we are with passenger numbers. I'm just going to call upon my colleague Stuart, who's our head of network, who's just going to take you through some of the headlines of the changes that we've got coming from September. Thanks, Stuart.
So as Simon says, we've got some changes coming through to services, and I believe we'll be more than happy to share these if you've not had them already. The majority of services are just timetable changes, and as Simon highlighted, the biggest change will be the transfer of the 29 and 75 to Wells Depot. There's various services, as I said, just all timetable related changes, and apart from that, there's only a few services that have some trips withdrawn where there's lower passenger usage. There's a revised timetable coming in on the 21, which has got extra time around Bridgewater to allow for the increased traffic around there. We've got some extra journeys on Service X22 to Tiverton, but as I said, the majority of them are just timetable changes.
Thanks, Stuart. Chair, that concludes our update, and obviously happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Stuart. So in terms of the detail of that, your proposed changes, is that now published? I just wonder if we probably ought to have some kind of note on that from you, or something to put in the minutes, just so that the changes are sort of explicit, so that people can see those. And
yeah, I think what we'll do, Chair, if it's okay, is I'll ask Stuart to share with you a schedule that we have, which breaks it down by route and what those proposed changes are, which can be circulated within the group. So the registrations are in, and we've consulted with our staff. So I'll ask Stuart to share a copy of that so that it can be circulated.
Okay, thank you. So I was also anticipating you might have said something about how the situation might have been a bit worse. Obviously, we've been working with you on potential changes over the last few weeks to enable you to come to some conclusions. Is there anything you wanted to say about potentially what we've managed to avoid getting into?
Yeah, I mean, I think working collaboratively over the last few weeks has really helped us to ensure that ultimately, we've prevented some further cuts to the network because of the impacts that we've had through in costs. So having worked collaboratively with the council, we've been able, and utilising the bus service improvement plan, we've been able to come to some solutions from some routes that otherwise may have been in the kind of the in that category of unsustainability. But just going back to my point that I made earlier, I think key now for the for going forward is that we work in partnership not only with the council and ourselves as the operator, but I think collectively as a group, everybody on this call, we really do need to now work together to ensure that we're doing what we can to campaign, to basically go back to the to the public and make it clear that these services it's really important that they are used. As I say, we've got fares as low as they've been for some time. We're working hard on the reliability, but fundamentally for us to ensure that we've got a long-term sustainable bus network, we do absolutely need to see those numbers, the growth numbers improve and continue to grow, so that ultimately we can provide that level of service in that network commercially without the need for support. There is some uncertainty around what that long-term future looks like with regards to funding. So we know we've got the £2 fare scheme in, that goes to £2.50 from November. and then it's, you know, it's what happens thereafter. The support that we get directly from the government in terms of bus recovery grant has also been dramatically reduced this month. That's been reduced by 70%. So we're very much you know, up against it as operators. And whilst we're seeing that growth in the corridors that I've outlined, it's absolutely imperative that, as I say, that growth continues, and ultimately we have a sustainable bus network of the future. Sorry, Chair, I didn't want to go into too much detail, but hopefully that was, you know, that helps sort of express the situation that we are in. And fundamentally, I think there's responsibility on all of us now to really, you know, to go back to our you know, our local constituents and the people within our localities, our parish councils, etc., and just really promote the fact that our bus network is there to be used and is a real genuine alternative to using the car. Hopefully that's helpful. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Simon. And just to set out the council's position on some of these challenges, obviously it's a really challenging situation at the moment with regard to the kind of commercial viability of a range of services. So we do have what's called BSIP plus funding that we've been awarded as a council for this financial year, which enables us to continue to support some services that we're already supporting through previous grants, and to enable us to help support services which may be under threat in the future. And we've asked for quite a lot of information from the operators in terms of potential commercial risks to their services, so that we can think about how we target our investment. And I think we've come to a conclusion, which is helpful. But I think what we do want to do is to be very specific going forward about potential services that might be under threat in the future, and to run a really ambitious campaign, both in terms of communications and also through, hopefully, the support of Peter Travis and the great range of support that Peter can garner in terms of communities and parish councils, etc., to really focus on those routes and say to people, you now need to use these, otherwise they won't be around in the future. So our view is we want to be more specific, I think, about the routes that may potentially be under threat, and really try and generate demand for those services so they become more sustainable. So I don't think we should go into much more detail now, but over the coming months, I think we would want to say something about particular routes and garner that support as part of an ambitious communications campaign associated with some funding that we've been able to put in. So that's where we are. So I've got some hands up. David Redwell.
Yeah, well, thank you, Simon, for sharing some of this information with me with Janet a few weeks ago. Very grateful. And thank you very much on record for the recovery plans. You seem to do quite quickly when myself and Peter Travis point out to you a number of issues where people get stranded or things start to go wrong. And I appreciate the way in which the team now looks at that and is trying to put that back as quick as possible. So there's a couple of issues that do worry me. The first one is obviously the 21 corridor, which, as we know from experience, we've had passengers got stranded off the 20 from Weston-super-Mare. There's a lot of interaction on that corridor. It actually works as one corridor, Weston-super-Mare to Taunton. People cross over it, go from Weston, the hospital, go down through the Bridgewater and High Bridge. They don't terminate at Burnham-on-Sea. So one thing I'd ask the county council, or sorry, the county, I should say that, the council and North Somerset possibly, is to look at whether that 2120 should go back as one service running from Weston and Taunton, something to look at, because it was run by Bridgewater as a through service and it was much better for passengers. And that point's been made to me by a number of communities and town councils along that route. Splitting it in the middle without connectivity, if things go wrong, leaves people stuck at Burnham-on-Sea or trying to get to the train station to go on to Bridgewater and Taunton. So that's the issue there. I welcome the transfer to Wales of the 29 and the 75. It's going back to where we were 15 years ago when Wales ran those services. One of them was run from Wales, but was operated by Southern National Staff, but still ran from Wales. I wonder if there's plans to move the 77 back to Wales as well in the future, because that would make sense. But I'm also concerned about the ability of First West of England and First South to make sure that we have a joined up Somerset network. Peter mentioned working with the North. Pastures see it as one network in the county of Somerset. And we just need to be reassured that First Group PLC will make sure that timetables, information and booklets are coordinated between the Wales operation, Simon, and Taunton, Minehead and Yeovil. I'm not sure what the future of Yeovil Garage is, but I do welcome this. But I just want to make sure that we don't lose too many services by moving buses that start from Wales, go down to Bridgwater and Taunton, and we're still able to make sure there's peak journeys back in and out of Bridgwater. On the Minehead situation, I think that's difficult. If things go wrong at Minehead, I don't know whether the garage has a maintenance or whether that's something you're looking at, but then that affects buses in Ilfracombe, Lynmouth, as Devon Council points out, and Andrew Davis, and also Minehead itself. I think there's 2 points I would add. That the need for spare buses in Taunton and maintenance on turnaround is something we pick up quite regularly, that a spare doesn't go out to pick up a bus on the 1 or the 6. And is there a provision for a bus to be kept at Minehead? Because a spare at Minehead, I know staffing's difficult, but maybe there's the summer and there's a lot of drivers don't drive university services in Bristol around at the moment and Bath, come down to Somerset. It's an option and thought. But I do think we need to pick up on the Minehead issue. If a bus goes down, it does seem to take out a service on a very rural corridor with a very limited train service. And leaves people in real difficulties, and we pick that up quite regularly. But I welcome the recovery plan. I do welcome the work you're doing, Simon, on putting it together. I do very much welcome the work that Janet Bell's been putting into this. Well, I met the other day, head of UK Bus. But I do want to make sure that Somerset is seen as one county, even though we got 2 divisions of First in the county. And I think that's the trick of ticketing. And I say this to County Council now, but through ticketing information, Somerset tickets that are available on First South and also on First West of England. Pastures don't understand how First works, nor should they understand at all. They just need to travel across Somerset by bus or by bus and train. And I hope that information is being looked at. The other point I'd make, bringing in a Rover ticket, surely we can work with WECA to extend their rider tickets. So there's a rider version of the Somerset version of the rider. That might be an easy thing to do, John, because the operators are the same in WECA, that are mainly the same in Somerset, with the exception of Hatch, Green and Go Ahead, Dartline. So perhaps there's some work there about extending the ticket system. But I welcome this. I think it could have been far worse. But I do understand the need to make sure we actually fund the service in Somerset. But I do go back to the County Council having a responsibility for next year's precept. And I say this to Baines because they're on the call as well, and WECA. We need to make sure the precepts are set at a level that can fund the buses in the county. Can I say, if the corridor goes down between Weston-super-Mare and Taunton, it's very bad, can we ask, and Luke's on the call, Luke Farley, I know you're there. Can we ask that First Great Western do some ticket acceptance so we don't need people stranding in Western and able to get back to Bridgwater and Taunton if bus service fails through the M5 or other reasons? Thank you very much. But I welcome the moves going forward.
Okay, thank you, David. I mean, there's a lot of points there. Are there any particular responses to that, Simon, in terms of your services that you'd want to make at the moment?
I'll just come in briefly and thanks, David. There's lots of points there for us to consider, but just to give some sort of quick responses. I mean, with regards to the 77, yes, we are considering that as a potential relocation to Wales, where it was before. That would be more efficient for us to run there. So watch the space on that one, but not currently scheduled to be part of the September changes. Just in terms of our joined up approach with our West of England or Western Wales, as they are now called, colleagues up up the road, then yeah, you have my absolute commitment that we are very much looking to work collaboratively there to make sure that the Bus of Somerset experience is seamless and not necessarily noticed, as it shouldn't be, between who operates it. So we are working very, very hard on that, David, to make sure that that is very much the case. With regards to Minehead, yes, our plans are to have a spare vehicle there. We don't have maintenance there, only for very, very basic maintenance. So therefore, maintenance is done of a nighttime man in a van style, person in a van style, should I say. But no, we are very much looking at ensuring there's a spare vehicle there, so that if there is any mechanical issue, we can just slot the vehicle straight back in. I just want to allow, if there's anything, Stuart, you wanted to come in on there, just in terms of some of the route specific stuff, but if not, then that's probably the headline responses from me. Anything else, Stuart?
No, I don't think so. I'll just reiterate that obviously we're working closer than ever with his colleagues in the Western Wales business unit now.
Yeah. Thanks, David. Really great points. Appreciate your feedback.
Okay. Thank you. I've got Peter Travis next. Peter.
Thanks, Mike. I just would like to pick up on the points that I was very glad to hear both you and Simon make, that you're keen and willing to work with bus campaigning groups, because we're very keen to work with you, particularly on under threat services. So what we have seen in the past is problem routes. The bus operator understandably has taken action, and we've not had any opportunity to try and address some of those problems. And we've now got more than a dozen bus user groups across the county in nearly all of our towns, and we're very, very keen to work particularly with the bus operators, but also with Somerset Council to address routes which are seen as problems. Just on the process issue, Simon's team publicly announced the changes to the routes coming in September. What the 4.11 of the EPS says, when contemplating making changes to the frequency of services included within the EPS, bus operators will consult with the Bus Advisory Board and take into account any comments made by the Bus Advisory Board prior to making such changes. So First South went public with its changes prior to talking at the Bus Advisory Board. Is that the way it should be? What's the considered view on that? You're on mute, Mike.
Oh, thank you. Sorry about that. There's a bit of chat in the background here in the office, so I put myself on mute. No, that's a really good point, Peter. So first off, thank you for the offer to work with us. I think that will be really valuable over the next few months to do some very targeted work. In terms of the Bus Advisory Board, yes, I mean the intention behind the enhanced partnership planning scheme is for changes to be discussed at the board before they're made. So it is disappointing from our perspective that decisions have been made and announced, and I think it was part of the challenging situation over the last 2 or 3 weeks to get an airing at the Bus Advisory Board in a timely way. I think it's challenging, and I guess Simon will want to reflect on this, and other operators indeed, that they have staff who are affected by changes, and it's a difficult thing to do, to have a public meeting where you're talking about things that affect individuals. Certainly, I can understand you wouldn't want to have a public airing of issues before you've had a chance to brief those individuals, and sometimes there will be statutory consultations, etc., with staff to do where changes are significant. So it's challenging territory. I think we've got to get better at it collectively, so that there is some opportunity for discussion at the board before decisions are made, and that somehow, and matters that affect staff can somehow be communicated to staff earlier as potential changes before they're aired, something like that. I don't know, but I think it's a really good point, Peter, but it's challenging, just given the need to respect individuals and their their potential employment, etc. So I don't know, Simon, if you've got anything to add to that at this stage, but certainly we need to talk it through and work out how we get slicker at some of these things.
Completely agree, and thanks,
you.
Chair.
Yeah.
I could totally accept everything you've just said there is absolutely spot on. I mean, of course, this does affect our people. Whilst we are transferring our routes, ultimately closing Bridgwater Depot means there are people that are affected there. So it really does need for us to engage and consult with our employees before it gets into the public domain. So as soon as we start talking about changes to relocating routes, that is as good as it's going to be in the public domain, and we need to control that for obvious reasons. I think on this occasion, it's probably slightly it's not what we'd want, and I'd say that given that it does involve a depot closure, I'd say this is probably a case in isolation, and very much moving forward you have our full commitment to work with this forum in terms of engagement and making it very clear what our plans are to seek your to seek views and feedback. But what I would also say is that Stuart's on the call here today. We absolutely welcome, some of you do already regularly, and we really appreciate it, but please do don't feel that you have to wait into these forums. Please do get in touch with us. Any feedback that you've got regarding our network, we will consider, we will listen to, and where we can, we will act upon it. So keep the dialogue going with us, please, guys, because it's really welcome. I mean, I'm not a local expert of every single bus and every single route in this area. Stuart certainly is, but you guys are more than anybody. You see it and you feel it every day. So please keep the feedback coming, and we'll make sure that is used to shape our future networks. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Simon. Okay, so there's a couple of questions in the chat. Query regarding Bridgwater. With the closure of the Bridgwater First Depot, what is happening, please, to bus station provision for welfare, rest facilities for drivers? I'm concerned that as our drivers use Bridgwater Bus Station for welfare breaks, this facility may close, posing the same issue. This is partly being unpicked in Taunton with the establishment of the mobility hub. It is of huge concern that drivers may not be able to access rest and welfare facilities in Bridgwater. Simon, I guess that's one for you.
No plans to change. We recognise that there's a need for our staff to have welfare facilities for their meal break. So yeah, no change.
Okay, thank you. And then there's a point from Stuart. I don't know, Stuart, do you want to just talk through your query about Dartline 20 service?
Yeah, we got a few problems with getting the fare, the £1 fare, extrapolated out of the £2 fare on the ticketer system. Doesn't seem to want to separately account, which means that we can't reclaim the money that we may be short charging for to run the service. I was quite resistant to the £1 fare because I knew we could have problems, and it's actually come to light now. So I have difficulty giving you figures so that you've got something to work with, and also claiming back any monies that are owed, because we can't currently extrapolate. I'm working on it, but I've not got an answer currently.
Okay. Presumably we can work with you on that. John, have you got anything to add to that at the moment? I guess it needs a specific conversation to work out the solution.
Yeah,
but
yeah, it does really, Stuart. I mean, it's probably best that you contact Ian Bell offline around that, and we'll work with you to see whatever we can do to sort that problem out.
Just to make my life absolutely complete, the wonderful people at Go have come in and removed all my email contacts, which has been very helpful. It made life very, very difficult for me because I can't actually get mail out unless someone sends me mail. So if the relevant person could just send it to info@Dartline, it will find its way to me, and then I can get back to them direct, and then we can have this discussion offline.
Right, we'll do that. Thanks, Stuart.
Thank you.
Then we've got a comment from Phil. at Wiltshire. Does the transfer of the 29 and 75 to Wells Depot mean that they'll be operated by First West of England rather than Buses of Somerset? Simon?
I can answer
Hi.
that for you,
Oh,
Chair.
Stuart. Yeah.
Yeah, go on, Stuart. Thanks.
It will be West. It'll be operated by them and not Buses of Somerset. Yeah.
Thank you, Stuart. And then finally, comment from Richard Morgan. I've heard several stories of the 21 not turning up in Bridgewater due to staff sickness or unavailability. Do you think you have enough staff to cover sudden staff shortages of these essential services? Again, Stuart or Simon?
Well, just to reiterate one of my slides in my presentation around performance, you can legislate for as much sickness, and obviously we do. We plan for sickness, we plan for holidays. When you have on the day sickness, it makes it harder to cover. There's only so much spare resource that we can obviously include in our schedule, because already we're talking around how making buses sustainable is a challenge, and yeah, we have spare resource during peaks, but unfortunately if we have huge spikes in sickness on the day, it makes it very challenging. So we do our best, and our sickness is coming down, our attrition is coming down. Our training school is growing. We're doing all the right things, so hopefully you'll start to see a much more reliable service, as I outlined earlier.
Okay, thanks, Simon. Okay, so I think that concludes that item. And I sort of going back to the original presentation from Simon, I think there's some really heartening figures there. Really good stats about the performance of the £1 fare, particularly, and growth generally is getting there, although there are some challenging circumstances still. But yeah, so I take a lot of heart that the decisions to invest the BSIP funding in one place, and to come up with initiatives like the £1 fare have been the right thing to do, and seem to be generating growth. So let's hope that continues, and we can hopefully bid for some more money to transfer that way of working onto other areas. Okay. I think that's it for that agenda item. So moving on, so a little bit behind time, but I think it's definitely worth spending some good time on those points. Update now on digital demand responsive transport. John, do you just want to give us an update on DDRT?
Yep, I can give a quick update on this. So on DDRT, I can confirm that we've now awarded the contract to Padam Mobility to deliver the driver and passenger apps, the booking website and the back office system. So the digital element of this, we've now awarded the contract, and we're working closely with the contractor at present to set the system up. Passengers will still be able to ring through, as they do with our other DRT systems at the moment, and book through the office. So there'll be a phone number available for people to make bookings if they don't have access to the internet or a smart device. Passengers with the DDRT will now be able to book up to 1 hour in advance before they want to travel, and also 1 hour before they travel rather, and up to 2 weeks in advance. So we'll still have the 2-week window as we have with all our other DRT systems. And as I say, Padam are currently setting up the app and the booking page. We've worked with the existing Slinky DRT provider to look at how best the new service will work with existing services. So we've slightly changed the areas of DRT coverage to allow the Somerton DRT to slot in, and we've expanded slightly some of the areas in South Somerset as a result of that to get some slightly better coverage. And also we'll obviously have better coverage in the Somerton area, because we'll have 2 vehicles on this, so that will considerably improve matters in that area. We consulted with Somerset Bus Partnership. We had a very useful meeting a few weeks back. We got some very helpful feedback, some of which we're incorporating now, some of which we're considering and may come in the future as we see numbers grow when the service comes in. We've started briefing local councillors. We've already started that process. We've got a few more to speak to in the next couple of weeks, but we're briefing them on the service and how it will work. We've no firm go live date at the moment. We're aiming at early autumn. Mainly this is dependent on vehicle deliveries because we're expecting 2 brand new vehicles to provide this service. But as I know the operators on the call will understand, delivery of new vehicles is challenging at the moment, so we don't have a fixed date for those yet. We've currently advertised for staff, obviously for drivers and for coordinating staff, and interviews are ongoing at the moment to bring people in to run the service. And we'll start promoting the service, obviously, more vigorously once we have a definite date and have finished briefing members. And when we have that definite date, the booking system will be opened up 2 weeks prior to the start to allow people, obviously, to book well in advance so they can get their journeys in before the service actually commences. That's the update.
Thanks, John. Does anybody have any comments or queries on that? No, not seeing any. That's good progress. Thanks, John. And we're now miraculously back on time, so that's helpful. Item 7, passenger satisfaction survey. So, Tim, would you be able to present an update on this for us?
Yes.
Morning, Tim.
Morning. You're right. No problem. Fairly brief update, if that's all right. We're currently working with the contractor Queenswood, which is a subcontractor of WSP, to set up the customer satisfaction surveys across Somerset. The date planned for the surveys is the calendar month of September. The company that we're working with has recently completed a very similar exercise for Devon County Council with very impressive results, getting over 2,400 bus user surveys on board vehicles, and also are currently working to set up with the council the pulse surveys that they want to put on the vehicles in terms of QR codes where people can immediately register their satisfaction with surveys. What we are looking to do is a very similar process with Somerset. So we're currently at the process now of mobilising the September surveys, where Queenswood will send out staff that are under their employ across a minimum of 6 routes that we will work with various people to select that basically capture the sort of the network across Somerset in its best way in terms of high frequency routes, rural routes, so a fairly good geographic spread and type spread. We will then develop the questions with Queenswood and Somerset County Council colleagues to ensure that we capture the right sort of questions, mobilising that for the start of September. And then once that is underway and largely complete, we'll start working with bus operators and the Somerset colleagues on the Pulse survey. And that's pretty much where we are in terms of an update. Thanks.
Thanks, Tim. So I've got a hand up already from David Redrell. David, do you want to speak on this?
Yeah. Hello, Tim. My just concerns is it's okay to ask about the quality of the bus and the driver and the customer service, but are we also going to make sure we capture the quality of the bus stations, the infrastructure that are not responsible of Go Ahead Group or First Group or Stagecoach or Libra Travel, so that we capture the bus stops, the shelters, and the bus stations that are owned by the Somerset Council, and the quality of the service that the council provide in terms of passenger facilities, or whether that is Taunton Railway Station interchange or Minehead or issues like that, or the overall bus rail interchange on the 68, so that we don't just capture what the operators do. And the service I've been involved in the past, there's always been questions about the state of the interchanges, bus stops and infrastructure, passenger information. I would hope we're going to capture that, because this is the first time that Somerset Council's existed as a transport authority without any district councils to pass bucks to and things. So it'd be useful to see the quality of the performance of the county as transport authority and the provision of services and infrastructure it provides with the town council.
Thanks, David. Tim?
Yeah, Yes, indeed. There's a whole set of questions that we're looking to ask across a wide range of touch points for bus services. So it's not simply the performance of the vehicle that people are on, it's also the wider attributes to the network. So certainly we will be picking up as many questions as we can that capture all of that, from bus stops to bus stations to information to service performance, attitudes of passengers towards the staff that provide the services and the staff that provide information services. We've got the question set that Devon Council used as a starting point, because we know that worked quite well for them. We've also got some intelligence from Queenswood and some advice on how we can make that question set even better, remove some duplication, add some questions that we specifically want to ask, and ensure that we get an even higher level and standard of results from that. So yeah, we'll certainly be pulling that together, and I think there's probably an opportunity for some additional input from stakeholders into that question set as we go. But I'll work with Mike and Somerset Council colleagues on that to ensure that we get as much information into that in the time period we've got to mobilise it. But yeah, very good points, and certainly something we're looking to include. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Tim, and good point to make, David. Thank you for that. Peter Travis, you're next.
Hi, Tim. Very much welcome that you're doing this survey. I think it's well overdue. As we're running 20 stalls in September, would your methodology allow us to hand out those questionnaires and get them completed at those stalls, or would it not help? Because we're certainly going to be talking to a lot of bus users, and a lot of very traditional bus users, and bus users who are not online tend to be the key ones who come to our bus stalls.
Yeah,
Tim?
Yeah, I think that's a very good point to raise, and a really good source of potential response as well. We'll have to work with Queenswood and Somerset colleagues to make sure we capture that in the right way, because the way the surveys are set up are for on bus direct feedback, and particularly relate to the bus that is being travelled on at that point in time, so we can get a very specific view of the network. So it's not a no. It's just that's a really interesting point and a really good source of extra feedback that we want to capture. We'll probably just need to work with Somerset colleagues in Queenswood to work out the best way of doing that, whether it's the same questionnaire, which when users then start to fill it out, if you hand it out, we'll go, well, I'm not on a bus, so why is the question asking me about the bus you're travelling on today, etc. We'll have to work out how we maybe have a separate set of questions, or how we phrase that right. But you're right, we don't want to lose that potential, because you're absolutely right, we've got people that aren't on buses that have feedback, and it would be a really good way of getting that into the system. So we'll factor that in and work with you on that, I think, is the best answer I can provide at the moment.
Thanks, Tim. And yes, I agree, we don't want to confuse people, so I think it would need to be a bespoke questionnaire, but let's have a look at that and work out what we can do. Thanks, Tim. Okay, so if there are no more questions on that update, we'll move on to the update from the chair of the bus user and stakeholder group. So, Peter, do you want to give us an update on those matters?
Yeah, just guide me, Mike, as to how my camera is working. Is it working properly?
At the moment, we can't see you. Well, I can't see you. It's a black screen at the moment.
Okay, all right. It should be a disembodied voice. My apologies. As has been emphasised today, probably more than at any previous bus advisory board, it's made up of three constituent parts: the Somerset Council, the bus operators, and bus users. In the shape of bus user groups, we all need to work together, and are increasingly working together to provide a better bus service for Somerset's residents. How do the bus user groups help? Well, we use our social media reach, and we especially do that by announcing unforeseen changes to bus schedules, so that we use our Facebook sites and community sites to get the message out to as many bus users as possible when cancellations, which are too frequent and is probably the biggest gripe we have, do happen, whether that's due to accidents, trees down, roadworks, or driver shortages. And we've talked to Somerset about some of those issues. In Yeovil, Linda Snelling has even posted information on bus stops in the town to explain to bus users what's happening to their buses in a town which has suffered more than any other town in Somerset. So we help to promote bus usage by dramatically extending the reach of printed timetables. Too many bus timetables are sitting in bus operators' offices. Well, please do get them out to us this September, because we will literally distribute thousands of bus timetables this September. If we can't get them from the operator, we fund the printing of them ourselves, but it's much more cost efficient, certainly for us, and a better use of the investment the bus operators have put in if we can go to the bus operators. I'm thinking particularly of First South, and they've been very good in supplying timetables to us. We need to liaise with them ahead of September and ensure we have plenty of bus timetables available. September is a peak month for activity by bus campaigners. September is Catch the Bus month. It's when the schools, colleges, universities go back, and as we've heard, it's when timetables changes are often made by bus operators. So it's particularly important that we have the new timetables ready to give out to people, because a lot of bus users do not have internet access, so they don't see what's online. They do need printed timetables. They are hugely important to a key part of the passenger usage in this county. Last year, working with the ever-increasing number of bus user groups, we ran more Catch the Bus Month events than any other local transport authority in England, and we expect to hold even more in even more towns and villages across Somerset this September. Our bus users groups, they like to celebrate bus services and encourage people to use those bus services. And we've had much to celebrate this year. We've had the £2 fare across Somerset, Taunton's £1 fare, and we've heard, as you just heard, about the DDRT, bus improvements in Taunton, infrastructure improvements in Taunton, and mobility hubs. There's an awful lot of good things happening about buses, and that's really good news. One of our new bus user groups is being set up by the Mayor of Burnham and Highbridge, and at their inaugural meeting they were telling me that they celebrated the reliability of West of England's 20 service that connects them to Weston. The drivers of those buses also came in for much praise too, so very much full of praise where it's due. However, she reported that the buses of Somerset 21 and 21A have earned an appalling reputation, and it's not just in Burnham. It's been a particularly problematic route. She tells me that people in Burnham sometimes have waited for up to 4 hours for a bus to turn up, and they've had complaints that the bus app, where people have got the access to it, often doesn't work. And then when the bus eventually turns up, then the understandably under pressure drivers can be both rude and unpleasant. That's the feedback from regular users of that service. Burnham's Mayor Leslie Millard would very much welcome the chance to meet with a local representative of Buses of Somerset, and indeed Somerset Council, to see what can be done to this, to improve this vital service for their town. At the moment, it's got so bad that this new bus user group just doesn't feel able to encourage people to use the 21A, and that needs to be addressed as soon as possible. As has been evidenced today, buses of Somerset have had operational problems, and they're far wider than the 21 and 21A. It's been commented on publicly by Mike Rigby. What is really worrying is that these service issues could be undermining the efforts to ensure a very significant modal shift to buses in Somerset's nominated bus town of Taunton. It's been stated that the BSIP money was to be focused on Taunton to ensure that Somerset delivers a very marked shift to bus use. This was going to form the basis for Somerset's pitch for getting more money from the government to improve bus services elsewhere. So the problem being experienced in and around Taunton do have implications for us all. And we've heard of many bus disruptions, cancellations that in effect means in the Taunton area. I know Mike Rigby has expressed some disappointment that the increase in bus usage hasn't been greater in Taunton, and 14% is good news, but should it not be better? What did we expect? I'm sure we expected more than that. So with all these service disruptions, and I mean, also we've heard this week of the decision to close the Bridgewater depot, which is going to cost 50 jobs. It's quite concerning, and it was unfortunate that it was announced in the same week as perhaps the most important inward investment into the UK at any stage during the current government, which was the new gigafactory, was going to take place in Bridgewater, and there's a desperate need to have good bus services in Bridgewater. We've seen cuts to the #1 bus service in Bridgewater. Absolute need to have good bus services in Taunton, both during the construction of that plant and then during the ongoing nature of that plant. And Simon's shown the lost mileage data. Those figures mean that a lot of bus passengers have waited and waited and waited for buses to turn up, which just haven't been there. And that's been very hard on bus users. Now we've got a whole raft of cuts which are being made by management. Management should be responsible for delivering the bus services. That is the job that management has. That hasn't been happening to a level of satisfaction that I'm sure even buses of Somerset would have expected. So one hopes that that will be addressed, because again, what is happening is that bus passengers are suffering as a consequence. There is a bus passenger charter, which I'm being told by Somerset is now in place. It's tucked away in Annex G of the EP scheme on the Somerset website. Transport Focus offers guidance to LTAs on the bus passenger charter. It says every opportunity should be given to let passengers know about the bus charter. Government guidance said it should be published prominently on the local authority, prominently that the word is, on the local authority website and on participating bus operator websites. Currently, that isn't the case. We're told it's an approved document, but it's not yet the finished article. So a lot of gripes there, but I think if you talk to bus passengers, and it will be interesting to hear the results of the satisfaction survey that Tim talked to earlier, there is a need to improve the reliability of our bus services in Somerset. We want to work with the bus operators to help do that, to generate more business. And let's end by me celebrating examples of excellence in promoting our bus services by the operators. First South for the promotion they've used to establish an entirely new bus route along the North Somerset and North Devon coast with a very much acclaimed Exmoor coaster, something I've been on a good few times. It's a fantastic service. And praise too for First West of England for their highly effective PR initiative of a day of free travel on the D2 last month. And next month, they're going to do much the same with the 376 to Wells. It really does get communities talking very positively about buses. It's changed the tone of a lot of the comments about buses. So all credit to both operators for that. We want to get communities talking positively about buses, and that's the aim of the bus user groups in Somerset. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Lots of great points there. I note in the chat that Simon has committed to the timetable request, so we can sort of take that as read. Simon, do you have any responses? Obviously, quite a bit of that's about the performance of your services, which you did talk about earlier on and gave us some assurances. Is there anything further you'd like to say?
I did, and I won't go over that again. But just to thank Peter for his points. But I just want to clarify some of the points that he's made there, just for completeness, really, because you talk about 50 people being put out of work in Bridgewater. That's not what's happening. We're closing the building, we're closing the depot, we are moving the routes. So we haven't got a situation where we're putting a raft of people in a redundancy situation. We are relocating them to ultimately it's a change of work location for those guys. So I just want to make that clear, because obviously it's a sensitive time at the minute as we engage and consult with our employees. So the last thing I want is for there to be mixed messages around the future of our people. So I just thought that was really important that we clarified that. Management aren't signing up to a raft of cuts either. I've outlined, and Stuart's outlined, what our intentions are with our changes to the network from September, but it certainly isn't a raft to cut. So again, we just need to make sure that we're consistent with our messaging here. We're taking out some journeys that aren't sustainable, but absolutely we're looking to improve reliability, punctuality, but also to bolster services where they're needed most. And just in terms of our ongoing kind of commitment to engage, I'm sure many of you would have encountered Richard Gagg, sorry, his name escaped me for a minute. Richard Gagg, who since left us to go work for Portsmouth City Council. His replacement has been recruited and joined us in the third week of August. So once he's here, we will share his details with you, because we absolutely want to engage at a local level with you, as I've already outlined earlier on, so that we've got a good level of feedback from you and two-way engagement. So I just want to clarify those points, Chair. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Simon. Yeah, it's really important as a public meeting, which is recorded and will be on YouTube, to have those points really clearly made. So thank you for coming back on that and clarifying, so that there's no misinterpretation of the situation. I wanted to come back on a couple of points that Peter raised. So one thing, that the bus app. So yeah, I think some concerns have been raised about First's app, which we've also got some concerns about as a council. So not now, but I think in between meetings we definitely need to catch up with you on how the improvement plan for that will be working. Peter's concerns about growth in Taunton, I'm pretty content is the word, I guess, to see the figures for growth arising from the BSIP investment so far. It's a 3-year plan. We've made some service changes and some fare changes, and what we're also working on, obviously, is some infrastructure improvements. So there will be bus priority lanes going in, bus priority signals, the passenger hub enhancements, etc. So we're a few steps into a bigger program. So we would hope that there is more growth arising from those fuller initiatives in due course. But I think the growth we've seen is pretty impressive compared to other areas where that investment hasn't gone in. So yeah, we're definitely going in the right direction from my point of view. And then on the bus passenger charter, yes, the intention has always been that it's much more visible than it is. I think, unfortunately, with the breadth of things that we're having to deal with as a fairly small team. That's the one thing that has not quite made it through yet. Obviously the words are there, but as you say, it is a little bit buried. So you certainly got our commitment to finish off the public version of that. So we've got a very easy to access and read charter that will be widely distributed. So that will come as soon as we're able, and we are working on it. I did also want to mention the Busit campaign as well, obviously, which we sort of jointly worked up with you, Peter. That's been shortlisted for a National Transport Awards under the Campaign of the Year category, which is quite a prestigious award to get shortlisted in. So we've got high hopes that will be seen as a sort of national exemplar of how to do things in due course. So yeah, that's reflecting well on all of us, I think, as a collaboration in terms of making that work. So I just thought I'd mention that one. But thanks for your input, Peter. It's really appreciated as ever. David, you've got your hand up.
I just wanted to reinforce and support Peter, having also been out to Breen and Barrow and Burnham-on-Sea in the last 4 weeks, and the concern about the 2021. The 20 performs, it's first group service, but the 21 connectivity fails. And that's where we leave people stranded. They've gone to Western Hospital uphill from Highbridge. They've been sent from Bridgewater to Western Hospital. Western may be in North Somerset, but actually it operates as a Somerset Economic Centre. So I'm just going to ask the county, the council, I'm always talking about the county, Mike, but the council works with First Group West of Wales and West and First South to see if we can find a solution to that corridor. As I say, I go back to what people have been asking me. I've made this point to people in First Group as well at the highest level, that they would like to see the 21 and the 20 merged back as a through service. And I do believe by doing that, the opportunity for the kind of journeys that we used to have with marketing to the seaside town of Weston and the economic pull of Weston-super-Mare is something, and equally the pull in the other direction to Taunton from Weston-super-Mare for tourists and from Breen and Barrow. It used to work extremely well, and there was full and well-loaded buses, and we didn't seem to have lots of cancellations, including Sunday services. So perhaps we can look at whether Taunton Depot and Western Depot could share that resource. It's something I just put to Simon, but it certainly needs some action. And just say thank you to Luke at First Great Western for rescuing passengers when they were stuck at Burnham-on-Sea and they were taxied across to Highbridge Station to get back to Bridgewater and Taunton on a number of occasions. The trainers first to pick them up. But we'd rather obviously like to see integration rather than First have to rescue bus passengers from its own company. And then the other 2 points I wanted to make is I've been down to Axbridge and I've met with Councillor Hannah Young, and I know Peter's been on this case as well. We are very anxious to get the 126 sorted out between Wales and Weston-super-Mare. Councillor Hannah Young is the executive member for transport in Somerset, in North Somerset. I've seen all the service changes for First Group now out for Western, with some new services in the Western area of town and a new 125, but that doesn't go across to Axbridge, goes up to Churchill. I wonder if we can have an update on the 126. And then my final point I want to say, and I know Peter and I were all on it, bus rail integration with Andrew and Luke on the call. We are concerned about protecting bus rail integrated ticketing, marketing of Wales, Glastonbury and Street to Bristol on the machines, in the apps and at the booking offices, and also in the importance that we see regularly of the bus link between Taunton and Minehead, which you can book a ticket through, go on the app, Mike, and you can see it, or you can go online and find it, or you can go to a ticket office in Birmingham, but to Minehead. Those are things I would ask Somerset Council to make sure when they're talking to the Department for Transport about bus rail integration, the ticket office closures, which are scheduled to go in tomorrow, your comments. I'd be very grateful, 26. I'd be very grateful if we can make sure the bus rail integration things are picked up. And I don't think there's anybody on this call from Somerset, from the transport user groups in Somerset that really support ticket office closures in our comments back to the Department for Transport. But it is an important part of integration. It's in the DfT guidance about the buses and trains and ferries if we got any, but it's very important we can respond. I know Baines is on the call today in Somerset, so perhaps we can just make sure tomorrow all our points about bus for integration to the Department of Transport and tickets. And for those who want to go, there's a meeting tonight in the Great Western Hotel at Taunton, all about the future of Taunton booking office, which Somerset Council paid for, which is interesting in itself. Ray, Mike, thank you very much, but it may be your asset is closed, but just make sure that issue is picked up. And thank you to Luke, particularly, and Andrew for the work they do on this. We don't want to lose all that work because of the Department for Transport. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, David. And just to confirm, we are doing a response to the consultation on ticket offices, which will go in tomorrow. And I know you've got a question at full council tomorrow, David, which where we'll be confirming that we're doing that. So thanks for your points on that. We'll pick those up. I think the points on the 2021 integration are noted, and we will we'll take that offline between John and the operator, I think. 126, is there an update on that? Is that something, John, you could pick up on very briefly?
Very quick update on that. We are working with North Somerset Council. We are almost there in terms of a timetable. It is complicated because we have significant numbers of student movements on our side of the route, and North Somerset are also looking to integrate school transport movements into theirs. Plus, we're looking to build in meal breaks into the timetable itself to make it as efficient as possible. So we're almost there, and I've mentioned to Peter in an email I sent yesterday that we're hoping to have a draft timetable that we can share hopefully next week. So we're still working on that at the moment.
Okay.
Thanks,
John. Okay, Peter, did you want to come back with a question or a comment?
Just very briefly, just reverting back to Burnham's Mayor Leslie Millard, who I said I would do my utmost to establish a contact with them if Simon, either on this call or offline, could let me know who she should make contact with. And I presume the right person at Somerset is the overworked John Perrott, who gets many, many inquiries from bus users across the county.
Yeah, that's fine, Peter. I think John, I'm sure can attend a discussion if that happens. I'll leave it up to Simon to talk to you offline. I think about ability to service those sorts of meetings. But thank you for raising the point. Okay. If there are no more questions on the back of Peter's agenda item, I think we stood straight into any other business there with a couple of updates. Is there any other business that anyone wants to raise?
Yes,
David.
please. Simon's mentioned, I've mentioned it. I think we're desperate to get that transport hub reopened in Taunton. I think it will give First Group a base to keep their spare vehicles to operate from, like it did in the town. I think I support that hub and desperately want to see it reopened. And I'm very worried. Mike's not on the call, but it's a question at full council tomorrow. I just want to see the NHS given a shop or anything you can do, pay for it, buy it, whatever you want to do, Mike, for a year. But they need to leave that building. It needs to go back into use by passengers. And we're desperate to bring that building back into use for National Express, for First Group, Dart Line, and any other Flixbus and Megabus if you're going to use it. But Patch Green. But we need to make sure that comes in. And I just see things from the DFT saying, well, we're looking at bus service improvement plans. You want to make sure the capital's being spent. I don't want the DFT to crawl anywhere near that because we haven't started planning commission or we haven't got work on it. So I think that, to me, is the top priority in the county. And I know Peter Travis shares this view because we all discussed this the other day and some of the bus partnership and the transport groups. Getting that and the 126 is probably our top priority. And then hopefully the changes, it may come in with the 77 and the 51 in October or later on, are well communicated and discussed with everybody, staff and users. I welcome that move to Wales, by the way. But again, I'm very keen to make sure that we have a base first in the county town. It's a regional centre. And I think it will be much better with their management being able to be where the buses are. It always operates better if you've got management in a bus station and actually be able to watch everything. It was a superb operation when first had that location. It's obviously not theirs to run, never has been. Most bus stations in Somerset are actually owned by the local authority, owned by yourself, Mike, actually, and you work very well with them. This is just another asset of the county, and the same in the Wecker land. But I would just urge that bus station is a project I think everybody would like to see go out to consultation. We'd just like to see the planning permission if we need it, and just the building issues because it's quite an old building, and resources for toilets, cafe, waiting rooms, and particularly the hard-pressed RMT staff that drive our buses in Somerset. So there's decent facilities again for them in the town centre. So I just urge that is done as soon as possible, and we work with first National Express and the other operators, go aheads on the call, and Megabus and Stagecoach to make that actually happen. And probably the community, I was going to say, is communication on Park and Ride in Taunton. If the contractor changes, we just need to make sure that is communicated, or if it stays with first in the tender. But we need to make sure. And the other thing I was going to say, please, can we just see a way of making sure the gypsy problem is dealt with at both those sites? They just seem to appear on a regular basis and cause us difficulties. And my one other point to make sure for Simon is people get on the West Somerset Railway and get to Bishop's Lydeard and find the bus reminder not running. Maybe if that is the case, finally there perhaps could be a bus that is sent out from Taunton to Bishop just to pick those passengers up and bring them back into Taunton railway station. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, David. So response from the council to some of those points. On the Taunton bus hub, be assured that the project is progressing well. There are some outline feasibility designs for a proposed new layout. There's been a lot of work looking at the building and thinking about potential use of the building and having a good look around and deciding what we could do with it. The NHS presence there is not a barrier at the moment. Obviously, we are progressing on with the scheme, and it takes a while to get to the point at which we can start to consult and then build it. But it is pushing on. And I think we're at the point where we'll be sharing some details relatively shortly, I would imagine, in terms of consulting with stakeholders such as yourself. The traveller issues at the Park and Ride sites, we're very well aware of that, having incurred some considerable cost over the last few weeks in dealing with those issues, and we are looking at some changes to physical access, which we haven't got detailed proposals to share, but we're certainly concerned about it, and we'll be developing some proposals to deal with that. And then I think the final point about Bishop's Lydeard, I don't know if there's a response from Simon on that one before we wrap up. Possibly something you can pick up outside the meeting. Oh, Stuart, yeah.
Can you just repeat that? Sorry, you were breaking up. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, must have a poor connection here. David's point about Bishop's Lydeard and picking people up.
Yeah. So I can raise that with the local team in Taunton and see if there's anything we can do to improve that, by all means.
Thanks, Stuart. Okay, Peter, you've got your hand up.
Yes, thanks, Mike. Just to raise the make the point that it's great that First South is with us in this meeting. It's significant that First Wales and West isn't represented, given the importance it is, and all the other bus operators. I mean, I think this is a meeting where it would be good to see all the bus operators attending. It ought to be a meeting where all the bus operators feel obliged to attend. So just making that point. And First West of England will also be announcing bus changes in September. We've not heard any news on those. It's possible John Perrott is in conversations with them already. I'm sure he must be. But ideally, they would have been discussed at this meeting. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Peter. And there have been other operators on the call, I've noticed, as we've been going along. I think obviously Stuart Moon's here, and I think there was someone from Libra was here earlier on. And also just to note that we have changed the date at short notice, so that possibly isn't helpful to people either. But yeah, we will aim for as full representation as possible, and we will stress with all our operators the importance of the meeting, and hopefully people will find it's a valuable meeting. Oh yeah, great, there's Southwest coaches obviously as well on the call, so thanks for confirming that. Yeah, hopefully people find it a valuable meeting. I've certainly found it a very useful meeting today, and I'm sure going forward the operators will find it a valuable place to come and collaborate and share information. Okay, so I think we're on to the date of the next meeting, which is scheduled for the 17th of October. I think that's all we need to say about that. So thank you very much for
thank Simon for being so open and frank with us today, because I think it's very appreciated for all of us. I think we just put on record to thank First for being open and honest, and and all the other First colleagues for on. Andrew Hardy and Luke Foley on the call. Would be nice to have West of England here, but thanks Simon very much for the trouble he's taken to brief us all today. Thank you.
Yeah, so I certainly echo that sentiment. You know, these meetings are really valuable and important. I think the more open people can be, as far as it's possible in a public forum, the better, really. So I think from my perspective, these meetings are going well and doing what we hoped they would do. Okay, so I think we will call the meeting to a close then. On that note, so thank you very much for attending. I really appreciate it, and have a good afternoon, everybody.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.